Hello everyone, this is Marcy with MarcyFineArt, and I had a request for drawing fur from my lovely niece Tanya, and I'm assuming that she probably wanted to draw a pet rather than a fur coat. So what I wanted to start with, I'm no expert at drawing fur. I don't typically draw real detailed drawings. So what I will do is I want to pass on to the best of my ability how I would go about drawing your pet and incorporate some of those aspects of the fur in this. So I am using my pet Buster. So what I did with Buster, I took a cute picture of Buster and then I printed it out in black and white because when I do these videos for you, I have to show you, I'm showing you with a reference drawing. So if we take a look at Buster here, printed in black and white, at the top of this page, you'll see almost like a legend or with four different shades in it. And those four different shades, almost like a paint by number per se, I'm going to look at Buster and try to figure out where those four shades happen on his body. You know, the light ones are pretty simple. Then 2, 3, and 4, if you see that I've got numbers. Let's show you. See these numbers? I'm pointing at different areas, looking for the darkest darks, the lightest lights. And I'm going to follow the legend, and actually you can see how I have, encircled areas on him to discern which lights go where and which darks go where. So that's what we're going to do. Now that I have this photo, I am going to start drawing Buster, and we will come back and see how that's going. So this is phase 1. So I'm now preparing to start drawing Buster, and let me show you how I've started. First of all, I have drawn this 8 by 10 square, and I have these lines on that square. Then I did the exact same lines on Buster's reference photo. The way I did this, again, to not measure exactly, because maybe what you print out isn't exactly an 8 by 10. So let's see how that would work. I use this ruler to go corner to corner, both sides, and then I'm doing a straight line up and down to go right through the center of that X, and then along the sides, from this side to side. And I don't have my setup going today. I'm in another location, so excuse the camera moving just a bit. But these lines are going to help me place the parts of Buster to start with in the right spots before I do the darks and lights. So we can lay him out exactly on this sheet. So let's see what that looks like. Let's draw Buster's shapes first. So here I have Buster's shape on my paper. And if you remember my last video, you might want to take a look at it, was about drawing negative space. So I'm going to look at this sheet, and I'm going to ask myself if the negative space that I'm seeing here is correct. And I'm going to kind of check that out before I start in drawing Buster, because I actually see a little bit of a problem already. So if I can shoot down my problems before I start in, I'm ahead of the game. So let's check out negative space and see what that would look like. So now I rechecked as many angles as I could on Buster. And here's how he looks. He looks like a series of more sharp lines instead of a big blob. And he still may be off in lots of different ways. But by laying my pencil down on the reference photo and on this paper, I am checking before I start that most of my major shapes are correct, and that will prevent me from having to do a lot of erasing. So again, let's take a look at him. And see, the way I checked was like this, and like this. And then I went in and I did it with every single angle on this page. And this only takes a few minutes, so it doesn't take hours. But by starting out with a relatively correct shape, you'll save yourself lots of problems. Like after you put the eyes in, or after you put his nose and mouth in and they're in the wrong place, then you end up having to do tons of erasing, and it's a real hassle. So now let's go forward. I'm going to start putting in some basic shapes onto Buster. And as I do, I will keep checking those angles. Again, that's in the negative space tutorial, but we're learning it again here. So use your pencil. Don't think cat, think shapes. Okay, I have more lines on Buster, and he looks a little bit bizarre right now, like a French bulldog. But that's because he needs some kind of fur. Now this is actually why we started this video in the first place. So let's see if I can soften Buster up by putting those 4 tones in that we talked about. In fact, if we looked at this, remember there are these 4 shades at the top here. Let's see what I can do to get Buster out of his bulldog look with shapes and pull him toward a cat look by using these 4 tones and giving him, the cuteness that he actually is. So let's see what happens with that. Now here we are. Buster is getting some shading. He's getting, quote, some fur. He still looks pretty weird. In fact, to me, he looks kind of ugly. So then this is the part of your drawing where you say, we're going to keep on going. And now what I'm going to be referencing as I go from here to the end is Buster's lights and darks. The lights and darks are what make Buster cute. The way I'm doing his fur, and here's those lights and darks right up here. The way I'm doing his fur, and I'm going to go right in here and look at the fur. I'm looking at the way his fur lies. In other words, that fur is going up and down here, and as you come over on this side, see how the fur, this is the photo actually, see how that fur is going side to side. It's, now again, it's moving. So, in different directions on his body. So to make it look like fur, I'm watching for the direction that that fur is going. And as I draw with my pencil, I'm trying to use that same stroke in that direction to give it a fur-like appearance. So here's what I mean by that. See how I'm following the contours of where his fur lies to make it look like fur. And I'm just kind of at the beginning of doing that. But I'm going to continue with that and trust myself that as I put in these lights and darks with those strokes, even if I have to do some erasing to get the whites, that he will come out looking good. So this is the place, where you can think, oh my God, this is so ugly. But this is where you stay with it and push past that. And if you see any places you need to correct, you go ahead and do it. So let's continue with Buster's fur. So here we are. We're still doing some details on Buster. Now this is the part where I would say, oh my gosh, was your reference photo really bad? Why is yours not as good as that reference photo? And at this point, I would be saying to myself, because you aren't using it, if that reference photo looks pretty cool, then you're just not quite there yet. So I think I'm really getting there. Again, now we come into the matter of trusting the reference photo. It is an odd one. So I'm asking myself here, where is the light hitting Buster? And I obviously can see it's hitting him almost straight on in the face. This is one of those weird, photos you take with your phone. And so it's got this really sharp light on his face. But because it looks so fine in my reference photo, I'm going to use it as such. I'm not going to lose, this reference photo. Here I have another one here. And it's totally cool. So if I can see it there, I can put it in my drawing. I just have to be confident that I am looking for the same darks and lights that are obvious. This is ink spots on a page. If they can put those on there, I can get pretty darn close in a drawing. So how do you discern between these different shades of light and dark that I'm showing you? You need to squint your eyes. Around this Buster's eye here is, I would say, the almost the darkest dark in this entire reference photo, and his mouth, because it's right up against the white. So now you're looking at shades, drawing different shades on this guy. And you may only get so close, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with this drawing right now. I'm just going to try to take it a little bit further. And this eye, I'm going to say this eye of Buster's is very important. If I were going to detail out anything, when you were going to detail out something, especially on a pet drawing, get their eyes right. And sometimes the rest of them don't matter nearly as much as you think. So right here on Buster, I'm looking for the distinct darks and lights in this guy's eyes. Now let's look at these eyes. See the lights and darks even in that one eye, this particular eye. Oh my gosh, there's a lot going on there. I'd say 3 different shades of gray, and then that big white area around his eye is very important. This eye doesn't have very much going on, except it looks like he's got a heavy-duty mascara thing going. So those are the real key pieces I'm going to concentrate on, and we're going to call it a day on Buster. This is my final drawing of Buster. And as I mentioned before, I really was working on this eye, and I wanted to pay very close attention to the colors I was getting, or the shades of gray in that eye, because when you're looking at him, it's like that eye's a little bit darker, and it gives that glassy look that cats have in their eyes. So as I continued, I went beyond, and I would say the part that I really focused in on was this area. The darks and the lights in this area, where are they? And where are the darkest darks? For instance, let's look at these sections right here. 1, 2, 3, very, very dark. The section around his eye, very dark. The section on this side, very dark. And if you notice what I'm doing, we started talking about fur. You can see that I am doing that back and forth motion that lines up with the way the fur is on his head and body. And I continued that. This is the drawing of the fur. I continued to use my pencil to sketch in the direction his fur goes throughout the sketch. And I kept looking, like where are the light parts? And left those, and then where are the darker ones? Like there's a little bit of a dark blob right over here. And but again, I'm looking at the way that fur is lying on his body, and kept using my pencil to go in those different directions to indicate fur. So that's how I would draw fur. Again, it's not like every hair is on there, but if you pull away from him, you see that by indicating, the light and dark areas, and I'm going to zoom in, especially look right in here. You can see that there's a darker section. So I put that darker section in, and then I shaded over the whole thing, because that whole section's kind of dark. But it's just the indication of the fur that makes it look like it's kind of all there. And when something's really close to you, like his face is the closest part to you, that's where you want to indicate, quote, the most fur. So the most details are this part of him that are very, very close to you. I didn't worry as much about, the fur being real distinct on his feet. I let them be kind of dark. But again, here's how I did Buster. I maintained the same things that I do in any drawing. First of all, I'm looking at shapes. Then I'm watching that negative space so I get the angles correct and what's happening outside of his body. So that's a correct shape. Shapes inside of his body. And then the lights and the darks. For me, they're always the most important. And in this case, just using the lights and the darks as fur. So when I'm doing the lights and the darks, I just went in the same direction that the fur would be growing on this body. So if you're doing this, let me tell you, it probably won't come easy to you. I mean, I remember when I first started trying this, it could be frustrating. Trust yourself, trust your eye. Look back and forth, and use those guidelines. I erased them on him. I don't know what I just did with his reference drawing. But make sure you look at shapes and use those lines to help you place the shapes properly. So thanks again, and this is MarcyFineArt and Buster signing off. Thank you for joining me.